The massive Vorthak fleet moved through space like a wall of death, and Admiral Kang Tae-min watched them approach from the bridge of his flagship Soul's Pride. 200 enormous ships filled the darkness between stars, and each one was bigger than anything humanity had ever built. The Vorthak hegemony had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years, and they had never lost a single battle. Every species they met either surrendered immediately or got wiped out completely. Kang stood quietly next to his tactical display while his crew worked around him. Captain Park So-jung was studying the enemy formation on her screen, and Commander Lee Dong-woo was checking his fighter squadrons. Dr. Yoon Ha-na sat at her science station running calculations on the alien ships. Lieutenant Kim Jae-ho monitored all communication channels and listened to the chatter from across the galaxy. Everyone knew this moment would change everything for humanity. The humans had only 50 ships in their fleet, but Kang was not worried. He had been preparing for this day for years, even though he never expected it to come so soon. 3 months. Ego-human scouts had first encountered Vorthak patrols in the outer colonies. The aliens had ignored the small human ships at first, but then they started asking questions. Who were these new creatures, and where did they come from? The Vorthaks always asked the same questions when they found a new species. Park looked up from her screen and walked over to Kang. She was young for a ship captain, but she had the best tactical mind in the entire Terran fleet. Her black hair was tied back, and her uniform was perfectly clean despite the tension on the bridge. She spoke quietly, so only Kang could hear her words. Admiral, the lead ship is moving into position to transmit something. My sensors are picking up a standard Imperial communication array powering up. They want to talk. Kang nodded and straightened. His uniform. He had studied the Vorthaks for months, and he knew exactly what they would say. Every first contact followed the same pattern. The Empire would demand immediate surrender and total submission. Any species that refused would be destroyed as an example to others. It was simple, and it had worked for thousands of years. Put it on the main screen, Lieutenant Kim. Let the whole fleet hear what they have to say. The bridge lights dimmed, and a holographic image appeared in the center of the room. The creature standing before them was 8 feet tall with green scales covering its entire body. Its yellow eyes were cold and calculating, and its mouth was filled with sharp teeth. This was Supreme Admiral Vexthul of the Vorthak hegemony, and he commanded more firepower than most star systems could imagine. Primitive creatures of the species called humans. I am Supreme Admiral Vexthul, and I speak for the eternal Vorthak hegemony. You have entered space that belongs to our empire, and you must now face the consequences of your actions. Your small, fleet and pathetic colonies are nothing compared to our power. The alien's voice was deep and threatening, and it echoed through the bridge. Every word was carefully chosen to create fear and despair. Kang had heard recordings of similar speeches, given to dozens of other species. Most of them had surrendered immediately after hearing those words. You have exactly 3 standard days to surrender all your worlds and submit to Imperial rule. Your ships will be destroyed, and your people will serve the Empire for the rest of their lives. If you refuse this generous offer, then we will demonstrate why the galaxy fears our name. No species has ever survived our full attention, and you will not be the first. The hologram flickered and showed images of destroyed worlds and burning cities. Entire civilizations had been wiped out by Vorthak fleets, and their planets had been stripped of all resources. The Empire used fear as their primary weapon, and it was very effective against most species. You have 3 days to decide. Choose wisely. The transmission ended, and the bridge fell silent. Every human officer stared at the empty space where the hologram had been. They all knew the Vorthaks were serious about their threats. The alien empire had destroyed hundreds of species and enslaved thousands more. Their record was perfect, and their reputation was terrifying. But Kang was smiling, and his calm expression surprised everyone on the bridge. He walked to his command chair and sat down slowly. His fingers drummed on the armrest while he thought about his response. Park and the others waited for him to speak, but he took his time. Dr. Yoon, what did your analysis show about their shield systems? The science officer checked her data and looked up with excitement in her eyes. She had been studying Vorthak technology for weeks, and she had found something important. Her discovery might be the key to everything. Admiral, their shields are designed to deflect massive energy weapons like plasma cannons and antimatter missiles. But they have never faced kinetic bombardment or electromagnetic pulse attacks. Their biological nervous systems are integrated with their ship computers, and that creates a weakness we can exploit. Kang nodded and turned to Commander Lee. The fighter squadron leader had been quiet during the alien transmission, but now he was checking his deployment plans. His pilots were the best in human space, and they had been training for exactly this kind of battle. Commander, how many fighter drones do we have ready for deployment? 10,000, sir, and each one carries the new AI systems. They can think and react faster than any biological pilot, and they work together like a single mind. The Vorthax have never seen anything like them. Lieutenant Kim suddenly straightened in his chair and looked at Kang with wide eyes. He had been monitoring galactic communication networks, and he was picking up chatter from across the galaxy. News of the Vorthak ultimatum was spreading faster than light, and everyone was talking about it. Admiral, the whole galaxy is watching us. Every species with communication technology knows about the challenge. They are placing bets on how long we will last, and most of them think we will surrender immediately. Kang stood up and walked to the center of the bridge. His officers watched him carefully and waited for his orders. The next few minutes would determine the fate of humanity and possibly change the entire galaxy. He looked at each of his crew members and saw determination in their eyes. Lieutenant Kim, open a channel to the Vorthak flagship. Make sure it broadcasts on all frequencies so every species in the galaxy can hear our response. Kim's fingers flew over his controls, and within seconds he had established contact with the enemy fleet. The communication array was powerful enough to reach every corner of civilized space, and millions of beings would hear whatever Kang said next. Channel open, sir. You are broadcasting to the entire galaxy. Kang straightened his uniform and looked directly at the camera. His voice was calm and confident when he spoke, and every word carried the weight of human determination. He knew this moment would be remembered forever. Supreme Admiral Vexthul, and all beings listening across the galaxy. I am Admiral Kang Taemin of the Terran Colonial Fleet, and I speak for all humanity. We have heard your ultimatum, and we reject it completely. Instead, we offer you a counter-challenge that will change everything. The bridge was completely silent, and Kang could feel the tension in the air. He paused for a moment to let his words sink in before continuing with his impossible proposal. We challenge the mighty Vorthak hegemony to single combat between our fleets. If you win, then humanity will surrender and serve your empire. But when we win, you will withdraw from all occupied systems and release every enslaved species. The age of conquest through fear ends today. The transmission ended, and Kang sat back down in his command chair. Across the galaxy, billions of beings stared at their screens in shock and disbelief. No one had ever challenged the Vorthax so directly, and survived to tell about it. The impossible was about to become reality. Supreme Admiral Vexthul stared at the communication screen in complete disbelief, and his scaled hands gripped the armrests of his command throne until his claws left deep scratches in the metal. In 3,000 years of galactic conquest, no species had ever dared to challenge the Vorthak hegemony to direct combat. The audacity of these humans was beyond anything he had experienced, and for a moment he was too shocked to respond. General Korath stood beside the command throne, and his massive frame shook with laughter that echoed through the bridge of the flagship Eternal Dominion. The other Vorthak officers joined in, and soon the entire command center was filled with the sound of alien amusement. These primitive humans had just signed their own death warrant, and they were too stupid to realize it. Supreme Admiral, these creatures must be completely insane. They have 50 small ships against our 200 dreadnoughts, and they think they can win a direct battle. I have never seen such foolishness in all my years of service. Vexthul finally managed to control his shock, and he began to see the humor in the situation. The humans were going to provide entertainment for the entire galaxy before they died. Every species would watch the Vorthax crush another upstart civilization, and the Empire's reputation would grow even stronger. General Korath analyzed their fleet composition and give me a full tactical assessment. I want to know exactly how long it will take to destroy them completely. The massive Vorthak general moved to a tactical display and began studying the human ships with his experienced eye. He had commanded ground forces in hundreds of planetary invasions, and he understood military strategy better than most beings in the galaxy. What he saw on the screen made him laugh even harder. Supreme Admiral, their largest ship is only 800 meters long, while our smallest dreadnought is over 3 kilometers. Their weapons appear to be primitive kinetic projectiles and basic energy beams. They have no heavy plasma cannons or antimatter torpedoes. I estimate we could destroy their entire fleet in less than 1 hour. High Counselor Zelani stepped forward. From her position near the command throne, and her political mind was already calculating the benefits of this unexpected gift. The humans had just provided the Empire with the perfect opportunity to demonstrate their power to the entire galaxy. Every species would see what happened to those who dared to resist Vorthak rule. Supreme Admiral, this is better than we could have hoped for. The galaxy is watching, and when we destroy these humans in minutes, it will terrify every other species into immediate submission. We will not need to fight another war for decades. Meanwhile, on the human flagship, Seoul's Pride Commander Lee Dong-woo was preparing his fighter squadrons for the battle of their lives. His pilots were young and eager, but they had been training with the new AI drone technology for months. Each human fighter would control dozens of unmanned drones that could think and react faster than any biological brain. Lee walked through the fighter bay and checked each craft personally. The human fighters were small and fast compared to the massive Vorthak ships, but they carried weapons that the galaxy had never seen before. Electromagnetic pulse generators and kinetic accelerators that could punch through energy shields like they were made of paper. Pilots, listen carefully. The enemy thinks we are primitive and weak. They expect us to fight like every other species. They have conquered, but we are going to show them something completely different. Our drones will swarm their big ships and hit them where they cannot defend. Stay calm and trust your training. Dr. Yoon Hana was running final calculations on her science equipment, and her analysis of Vorthak technology was revealing more weaknesses with every scan. The alien ships were powerful, but they were designed to fight enemies who used the same tactics as them. Massive ships firing enormous weapons at each other until one side was destroyed. Captain Park, I am detecting something interesting about their biological integration systems. The Vorthaks connect their nervous systems directly to their ship computers to improve reaction time. But this also means that electromagnetic disruption could affect their entire crew at once. Captain Park So-jung was studying the enemy formation on her tactical display, and she could see the patterns that had made the Vorthaks successful for thousands of years. They arranged their ships in a wall of firepower that could destroy anything in front of them. But they had never faced an enemy that refused to fight in a straight line. Dr. Yoon, how long do you need to calibrate our EMP weapons for maximum effectiveness against their biology? Give me 30 minutes, Captain, and I can tune our electromagnetic pulse generators to disrupt Vorthak nervous systems without permanently harming them. We want to disable their ships, not commit genocide. Lieutenant Kim Jae-ho was monitoring communication channels across the galaxy, and the chatter was incredible. Every major news network was covering the story, and billions of beings were placing bets on the outcome. The odds were not good for humanity, but Kim was not worried about that. Admiral, the galactic betting pools are giving us odds of 1,000 to 1 against. The Haidari Empire thinks we will last exactly 17 minutes. The Synthetic Collective calculates a 99.7% probability of human defeat. Admiral Kang smiled at the news, and his calm confidence was starting to spread to his crew. He had been planning for this moment since the day humanity first reached the stars. Every human ship carried weapons and systems that the galaxy had never seen, and the Vorthaks were about to get the shock of their lives. Lieutenant Kim patched me through to Captain Lim Yu-jin on the merchant vessel Lucky Dragon. I want him to broadcast everything that happens here to the entire galaxy. When we win this battle, everyone needs to see exactly how we did it. Across space on the merchant ship, Lucky Dragon Captain Lim Yu-jin was setting up the most powerful communication array his small vessel could manage. He had been trading in this sector when the Vorthak fleet arrived, and now he had front-row seats to the most important battle in galactic history. This is Captain Lim broadcasting live to the Galactic Network. I am witnessing the impossible challenge between 50 human ships and 200 Vorthak dreadnoughts. Current viewership has reached 500 billion beings across the galaxy, making this the largest audience in recorded history. Ambassador Choi Min-soo was standing in the council chambers of the Galactic Trade Federation on the neutral world of Nexus Prime. Representatives from dozens of species had gathered to watch the battle, and most of them were already planning how to divide up human territory after the inevitable defeat. Honored delegates, I know that most of you expect humanity to be destroyed within the hour. But I ask you to watch carefully because you are about to learn something important about my species. We do not surrender, and we do not give up. The Vorthax are about to discover why we call it human ingenuity. The Hydari representative shifted his aquatic form in his water tank and spoke through his translation device. His species had been conquered by the Vorthax 2 centuries ago, and they had never recovered from the defeat. The idea that humans could succeed where they had failed was impossible to accept. Ambassador Choi, your confidence is admirable, but misplaced. The Vorthax hegemony has never lost a battle, and they have destroyed species far more advanced than yours. Your people should have surrendered when they had the chance. The synthetic collective representative was a tall mechanical being whose optical sensors glowed with calculated certainty. His species existed as pure logic, and emotion played no part in their analysis. The mathematical probability of human victory was so low, it might as well be 0. Ambassador, the tactical analysis is clear. Human weapons technology is insufficient to penetrate Vorthax defensive systems. Human ship design is inadequate for sustained combat operations. Human fleet composition lacks the firepower necessary for meaningful resistance. Defeat is mathematically certain. But Choi was not discouraged by their skepticism, and his smile grew wider as he watched the tactical displays. He had served with the Terran fleet for years before becoming a diplomat, and he knew exactly what Admiral Kang was planning. The galaxy was about to witness something that would change everything. My friends, you are making the same mistake the Vorthax are making. You assume that bigger and stronger always wins. You think that because we are smaller, we must be weaker. But human beings learned long ago that intelligence beats strength and creativity beats tradition. Back on the Vorthax flagship, Supreme Admiral Vex Thul was growing impatient with the delay. The humans had issued their challenge hours ago, and now they were just sitting in space doing nothing. Their ships were spread out in what looked like random positions, and they showed no signs of forming a proper battle line. General Korath, what are those primitive creatures doing? Why are they not moving into combat formation? Korath studied the human fleet positions and shook his massive head in confusion. After fighting hundreds of battles, he had never seen ships deploy in such a scattered pattern. It looked like the humans were either completely incompetent or they were trying to run away. Supreme Admiral, I believe they are paralyzed by fear. Their ships are spreading out because they realize they cannot win and they are preparing to flee. This is exactly what cowards do when they face superior force. The Vorthax dreadnoughts moved forward in their traditional wall formation, and their massive plasma cannons began charging with energy that could vaporize a small moon. Supreme Admiral Vex Thul watched the tactical display with satisfaction as his ships prepared to demonstrate why the galaxy feared their name. 200 of the most powerful warships ever built were about to crush 50 tiny human vessels in what would be the shortest battle in Imperial history. All ships target the largest human vessels first. I want their flagship destroyed within the first minute of combat. These primitives need to understand that challenging the Empire was the last mistake they will ever make. The first volley of Vorthax plasma fire lit up space like a dozen new stars being born, and the energy beams raced toward their targets at nearly the speed of light. Each shot carried enough destructive power to level an entire city, and the combined firepower of the Imperial fleet could have sterilized a planet in hours. But something impossible happened when the plasma beams reached the human ships. Instead of exploding in brilliant flashes of destruction, the energy simply vanished into what looked like empty space. The humans had deployed gravity well generators that created invisible pockets of twisted space-time around their fleet. The Vorthax weapons were being bent away from their targets and dispersed harmlessly into the void. Captain Park So-jung smiled as she watched the enemy fire miss completely, and her tactical display showed that every human ship was exactly where it needed to be. The Terran fleet had spent months practicing this formation, and now their precision was paying off in the most important battle humanity had ever fought. Admiral, the gravity net is holding perfectly. Their plasma weapons cannot reach us as long as we maintain proper positioning. Dr. Yoon, your calculations were absolutely correct. Admiral Kang nodded and gave the order that would change the course of galactic history. His voice was calm and steady as he spoke into his communication system, and every human ship received his command at exactly the same moment. All ships execute Protocol Swarm. Commander Lee, launch all fighter drones immediately. Show them what real warfare looks like. Commander Lee Dongwu pressed the launch button, and 10,000 small objects shot out from the human ships like angry insects emerging from a disturbed hive. But these were not ordinary fighters, and they did not carry biological pilots who could be killed or frightened. Each drone contained an artificial intelligence that could think and react faster than any living brain. The AI systems had been programmed with every piece of data humanity had collected about Vorthak technology, and they knew exactly where to strike for maximum effect. Instead of trying to destroy the massive alien ships, they targeted specific systems that would disable them without causing unnecessary death. Dr. Yoon Hana watched her sensors as the drones approached the enemy fleet, and her electromagnetic pulse weapons were ready to fire. The Vorthaks had never faced this type of attack, and their shields were completely unprepared for what was about to happen. Admiral, the drones are in position, and the EMP generators are fully charged. The enemy shields are designed to stop large energy weapons, but our small drones can slip through the gaps like they do not exist. The first wave of human drones reached the Vorthak flagship Eternal Dominion, and they immediately began their coordinated attack. Tiny electromagnetic pulse charges detonated against the ship's hull and sent waves of disruptive energy through the biological integration systems that connected the crew to their computers. Supreme Admiral Vex Thol suddenly felt like his brain was being scrambled by invisible lightning, and every Vorthak on the bridge collapsed to the floor in agony. The electromagnetic pulses were specifically tuned to disrupt their nervous systems, and the effect was immediate and devastating. What is happening? Why are our weapons not firing? Someone tell me what these creatures are doing to us. General Korath tried to stand, but his massive body was shaking uncontrollably, and his vision was blurred by the neural disruption. The electromagnetic attacks were affecting every Vorthak on every ship, and their biological integration with their computers was becoming a fatal weakness. Supreme Admiral, the humans are using some kind of neural disruptor weapon. Our crews cannot function, and our ship systems are failing. This is impossible. No species has ever developed technology like this. But the human attack was just beginning, and Commander Lee's drones were already moving to their secondary targets. The Vorthak ships were huge, but they were also slow, and their massive size made them easy targets for the fast-moving AI fighters that swarmed around them like predators hunting wounded prey. Lieutenant Kim Jae-ho was monitoring enemy communications, and he could hear the panic spreading through the Vorthak fleet as their perfect battle plan fell apart in minutes. The aliens were shouting orders that no one could follow, and their coordination was breaking down completely. Admiral, the enemy fleet is in chaos. Their communication systems are being jammed by our EMP attacks, and their crews cannot operate their weapons. Half of their ships have already lost main power. Captain Lim Yu-jin was broadcasting live from his merchant vessel, and his cameras captured every moment of the incredible battle. 500 billion beings across the galaxy were watching in shock as the mighty Vorthak hegemony was being dismantled by creatures they had dismissed as primitive insects. This is Captain Lim reporting live from the most impossible battle in galactic history. The human drones are swarming through the Vorthak fleet like they own the space, and the massive Imperial ships cannot even fight back. The first Vorthak dreadnought has just gone completely dark, and it has never been damaged in 200 years of conquest. On the neutral world of Nexus Prime, Ambassador Choi Min-soo was watching the tactical displays with quiet satisfaction, while the alien representatives around him stared in complete disbelief. The mathematical certainty of human defeat was being proven wrong by simple human ingenuity and determination. The Haidari representative was so shocked that water was spilling from his tank as he moved frantically to understand what he was seeing. His species had surrendered to the Vorthaks without a fight, and now these humans were making it look easy to defeat the unbeatable empire. This cannot be real. The Vorthak fleet has never lost a single battle. Their ships are the most powerful in the galaxy. How are these small human vessels doing this? The synthetic collective representative was recalculating his probability matrices so fast that his optical sensors were flickering with the effort. Every piece of data he had used to predict human defeat was being proven wrong, and his logical mind could not process the impossible reality. Error in initial calculations. Human technological capabilities were severely underestimated. Tactical doctrine analysis was incomplete. Probability of human victory is increasing rapidly. But Admiral Kang was not finished demonstrating human capabilities, and he had been saving his best tactics for when the enemy was already weakened. The Vorthax were learning that size and tradition meant nothing when facing an opponent who refused to follow the old rules of warfare. Captain Park, execute Protocol Taekwondo. Show them how we use their strength against them. Park smiled as she gave orders to the entire human fleet, and their ships began moving in a pattern that looked like an ancient martial arts form. 3 Vorthak dreadnoughts were converging on the Soul's Pride in an attempt to destroy the human flagship, but they were about to discover why humans had studied physics so carefully. The human ships used their gravity well generators to create momentum redirects that caught the massive Vorthak vessels in their own gravitational fields. The alien ships found themselves being pulled toward each other by forces they could not control, and their attempts to avoid collision only made the problem worse. Admiral, the enemy ships are caught in a 3-way gravitational spiral. They cannot escape without ramming into each other. Their own mass is being used against them. The 3 Vorthak dreadnoughts collided in a spectacular explosion that lit up space for millions of kilometers in every direction. The massive ships had been designed to withstand enemy weapons, but they could not survive the impact of crashing into each other at high speed. Supreme Admiral Vexthul watched in horror as 3 of his most powerful vessels destroyed each other while the tiny human ships slipped away completely unharmed. This was not how battles were supposed to work, and everything he knew about warfare was being proven wrong. Impossible. Those ships were invincible. Nothing should be able to destroy them. What kind of creatures are these humans? Dr. Yoon Hana was already preparing the next phase of the human attack, and her scientific mind was calculating the exact frequency needed to completely disable Vorthak biological systems. The electromagnetic pulse weapons could be tuned to cause unconsciousness instead of pain, and that would allow them to capture enemy ships instead of destroying them. Admiral, I can adjust our EMP frequency to render the Vorthak crews unconscious without permanent harm. We could capture their entire fleet intact and study their technology. But Kang shook his head because he had a different plan in mind. The galaxy was watching this battle, and he wanted to send a message that would be remembered for thousands of years. Humanity was not interested in conquest or revenge, but they would defend themselves against any threat. Supreme Admiral Vexthul forced himself to focus through the neural interference, and his 3,000 years of military experience finally began to assert itself over his shock and confusion. The humans had surprised him with their unconventional tactics, but the Vorthak hegemony had not conquered the galaxy by giving up after the first setback. He still had over 150 ships that were operational, and that was more than enough firepower to destroy the entire human fleet. General Bai. Korath, ignore the small drones and focus all remaining weapons on the human ships themselves. Their gravity field generators must have limited range and power requirements. If we can destroy the source vessels, their defensive formation will collapse. Korath was still suffering from the electromagnetic attacks, but his tactical mind was beginning to function again, and he could see the logic in his commander's strategy. The human drones were annoying, but they were not actually destroying Vorthak ships. They were just disabling them temporarily, and that meant the battle could still be won. Supreme Admiral, you are correct. The humans are using their ship-based systems to create the gravity wells that are deflecting our weapons. If we concentrate our fire on their largest vessels, we can break through their defenses. The remaining Vorthak dreadnoughts began to change their formation, and instead of firing at individual human ships, they started creating overlapping fields of plasma fire that covered entire sections of space. The new tactics were crude, but effective, and the humans suddenly found themselves facing a wall of destructive energy that was impossible to avoid completely. Captain Park So-jung watched her tactical display with growing concern as the enemy adapted to their defensive strategy, and she could see that the Soul's Pride was about to take heavy damage. The Vorthaks were learning from their mistakes, and that made them far more dangerous than an enemy who never changed. Admiral, the enemy is concentrating fire on our position. Our gravity wells cannot deflect this much energy, and our shields are already at 60%. We need to move or we are going to lose the flagship. Admiral Kang felt the ship shake as Vorthak plasma beams finally found their target, and he knew that the easy part of the battle was over. The aliens were no longer underestimating human capabilities, and they were starting to fight with the skill and experience that had made them masters of the galaxy. All ships, execute evasive pattern Delta. Do not let them concentrate fire on any single target. Commander Lee, deploy the reserve drone squadrons and target their weapon systems directly. But the Vorthax were ready for the second wave of drones, and they had modified their point defense systems to track smaller targets. Automated laser turrets began shooting down human fighters as fast as they approached, and the AI systems found themselves facing a much more difficult tactical situation. Lieutenant Kim Jae-ho was monitoring the battle communications when he detected something that made his blood run cold. The Vorthax were not just adapting their tactics, they were also calling for reinforcements from other parts of their fleet. More enemy ships were on their way, and they would arrive within the hour. Admiral Y am picking up subspace transmissions from the Vorthax command network. They have requested immediate assistance from their patrol fleets in the next sector. We could be facing 300 ships instead of 200. Dr. Yoon Ha-na was working frantically to recalibrate her electromagnetic pulse weapons, but the Vorthax had started using biological shields to protect their most critical systems. The aliens were covering their neural integration points with organic material that absorbed the disruptive energy before it could affect their crews. Admiral, the enemy is adapting to our EMP attacks faster than I can compensate. They are using their own biology to create natural shielding, and my weapons are becoming less effective with each strike. For the first time since the battle began, Admiral Kang felt a moment of doubt, and he realized that the Vorthax had not conquered the galaxy by accident. They were experienced warriors who knew how to learn from their mistakes and adapt to new threats. The human technological advantage was being neutralized by superior numbers and centuries of combat experience. 2 human ships suddenly exploded in brilliant flashes of light as concentrated Vorthax fire overwhelmed their defenses, and Admiral Kang watched good people die because he had chosen to fight instead of surrender. The weight of command had never felt heavier than it did at that moment. Admiral, the destroyers Busan and Incheon have been lost with all hands. The enemy is targeting our smaller vessels, and they are starting to break through our formation. But Commander Lee Dongwoo was not ready to give up, and his fighter pilot instincts were telling him that the battle was far from over. He had been studying the Vorthax fleet composition during the fighting, and he had noticed something important about their command structure. Admiral, I have been analyzing their communication patterns, and I think I found a weakness in their adaptation process. They are using a centralized command system that relies on constant communication with their flagship. If we can disrupt their coordination, they will lose their ability to adapt effectively. Lieutenant Kim suddenly looked up from his station. With excitement in his eyes, and his communication skills had revealed something that could change everything. He had been passively monitoring Vorthax transmissions throughout the battle, and his analysis was showing a critical vulnerability in their technology. Commander Lee is correct, Admiral. The Vorthax are using biological quantum entanglement for their fleet communications, and that means all their signals pass through a single central node on their flagship. If we can hack into that system, we could turn their own coordination against them. Park looked at Kim with surprise, because hacking enemy communications during active combat was supposed to be impossible. The quantum encryption used by advanced civilizations was unbreakable by conventional methods, and even attempting to interfere with it should have been detected immediately. Lieutenant, how do you propose to hack a quantum entanglement network without them noticing? Their security systems should detect any intrusion attempt within seconds. Kim smiled because he had been working on this problem since the moment he detected the Vorthax communication array, and his solution was typically human in its creative simplicity. Instead of trying to break their encryption, he was going to use their own biology against them. Captain, I am not going to break their encryption. I am going to introduce a virus into their biological quantum network that will make them think they are receiving valid orders when they are actually getting random noise. Their own neural integration will spread the confusion throughout their entire fleet. Dr. Yoon Ha-na stared at Kim in amazement because his plan was either brilliant or completely insane, and she was not sure which. Using biological warfare against quantum communications was theoretically possible, but it had never been attempted, and the risks were enormous. Lieutenant, that could work, but it might also cause permanent damage to their nervous systems. We could accidentally commit genocide. against an entire species. Admiral Kang listened to the debate around him while enemy fire continued to pound his fleet, and he realized that they were at a critical decision point. The conventional battle was turning against them, and they needed to try something desperate, or risk losing everything they had fought for. Dr. Yoon, can you modify Lieutenant Kim's virus to cause temporary confusion instead of permanent damage? I want to disable their coordination, not destroy their minds. Yoon worked quickly at her station while the battle raged around them, and her scientific training allowed her to understand exactly how Vorthak biology interfaced with their technology. The neural pathways that connected their brains to their ship computers could be temporarily disrupted without causing lasting harm. Admiral, I can create a modified version that will cause severe disorientation for approximately 30 minutes. That should be enough time to break their formation and force them to retreat without permanently harming anyone. Meanwhile, on the Vorthak flagship, General Korath was beginning to feel confident about the battle outcome, and his tactical display showed that human resistance was finally breaking down. 2 enemy ships had been destroyed, and several others were showing significant damage from concentrated plasma fire. Supreme Admiral, the primitive creatures are weakening. Their defensive formation is collapsing, and our concentrated fire tactics are proving effective. I estimate complete victory within 20 minutes. But High Counselor Zelani was still worried about the human capability for surprise, and her political instincts were warning her that something was wrong. The humans had been too quiet for the last few minutes, and that usually meant they were planning something unexpected. Supreme Admiral, perhaps we should be more cautious. These humans have already demonstrated abilities we did not expect. Their silence could mean they are preparing another surprise attack. Vexthul dismissed her concerns because his tactical analysis showed clear Vorthak superiority, and the humans appeared to be running out of options. Their unconventional weapons had been neutralized, and their ships were taking heavy damage from concentrated Imperial fire. Counselor, you worry too much. Look at the tactical display. We have destroyed 2 of their ships and damaged several others. The biological virus spread through the Vorthak quantum communication network like wildfire through dry grass, and within minutes, every ship in their fleet was receiving contradictory orders that made no logical sense. Supreme Admiral Vexthul watched in horror as his perfectly coordinated battle formation collapsed into complete chaos when his commanders began following random commands that his brain had never issued. General Korath, why are your ships firing on our own vessels? I never ordered you to change targets. What is happening to our communication system? But Korath was equally confused because his neural interface was telling him that the Supreme Admiral had ordered him to attack the ships on his left flank while simultaneously commanding him to retreat to a safe distance. The biological quantum entanglement that connected all Vorthak commanders was feeding them conflicting information faster than their minds could process. Supreme Admiral, I am receiving multiple contradictory orders from your command center. My ship computers are telling me to advance and retreat at the same time. Something is interfering with our neural network. Admiral Kang watched the enemy fleet tear itself apart as Vorthak ships fired on each other and collided in their confusion, and he knew that the moment for decisive action had arrived. The virus would not last forever, and once the aliens figured out what was happening, they would find a way to restore their coordination. All ships execute Protocol Soul Shuffle immediately, form the unified attack formation, and concentrate all remaining firepower on their flagship. This is our chance to end the battle decisively. The surviving human ships moved with perfect precision as they executed the most complex maneuver in their tactical manual, and what had appeared to be scattered individual vessels suddenly became a single coordinated weapon platform. Every gun and missile launcher in the Terran fleet focused on the Vorthak flagship, Eternal Dominion. Captain Park Sojung felt her ship shake as it locked into position with the other human vessels, and she could see the tactical display showing their combined firepower ratings. The Soul's Pride was now part of a weapons system that could deliver more concentrated destruction than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Admiral, all ships are in position and weapons are synchronized. We have enough firepower to punch through their shields and disable their flagship without destroying it completely. Commander Lee Dong-woo was coordinating the final fighter drone assault, and his AI systems had learned everything they needed to know about Vorthak defensive capabilities. The remaining drones swarmed toward the enemy flagship like guided missiles, and they carried the most powerful electromagnetic pulse charges that Dr. Yoon Ha-na could create. Admiral, my drones are in position to deliver a coordinated EMP strike that will disable their flagship completely. Once their command ship is neutralized, the rest of their fleet will have no choice but to surrender. Dr. Yoon Ha-na was monitoring the biological virus as it continued to spread through the Vorthak network, and her sensors showed that their neural confusion was reaching maximum effectiveness. The aliens would be unable to coordinate any kind of response for at least another 20 minutes. Admiral, the virus is working perfectly. Their biological quantum network is completely scrambled, and they cannot communicate effectively. This is our window of opportunity. Lieutenant Kim Jae-ho was preparing to broadcast the final phase of the battle to the entire galaxy, and he knew that billions of beings were watching in amazement as the mighty Vorthak hegemony was defeated by 50 human ships. The impossible was happening, and the galaxy would never be the same. Admiral, I have direct communication links to over 500 billion viewers across the galaxy. When we transmit our surrender terms, every intelligent species will hear our message simultaneously. The combined human fleet fired as one, and their coordinated assault struck the Vorthak flagship with precision that defied belief. Kinetic projectiles punched through energy shields while electromagnetic pulses disrupted every biological system on the massive ship. The Eternal Dominion went dark as its power systems failed, and its crew fell unconscious from neural overload. Supreme Admiral Vexthul felt his consciousness slipping away as the electromagnetic attack overwhelmed his nervous system. But his last coherent thought was one of complete disbelief. The Vorthak hegemony had never been defeated in 3,000 years of conquest, and now they were being crushed by a species they had dismissed as primitive insects. Admiral Kong opened a communication channel that reached every functional ship in the Vorthak fleet, and his voice carried the authority of absolute victory when he spoke to the aliens who had threatened to destroy humanity. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted in less than 4 hours. Supreme Admiral Vexthul and all commanders of the Vorthak hegemony, your flagship has been disabled and 80% of your fleet is no longer operational. You have 2 choices: surrender immediately and accept our terms, or watch us systematically destroy every remaining ship in your armada. General Korath was one of the few Vorthak officers still conscious and capable of responding, and he stared at his tactical display in shock as he realized the true extent of their defeat. The humans had not just won the battle, they had completely dismantled the most powerful fleet in galactic history. Human Admiral, this is General Korath of the Vorthak Ground Forces. Supreme Admiral Vexthul is unconscious, and I am assuming temporary command. What are your surrender terms? Kong smiled because the moment he had been planning for had finally arrived, and he was about to reshape the political structure of the entire galaxy with a few simple demands. The Vorthak Empire would survive, but it would never again be a threat to peaceful species. General Korath, the terms are exactly what we stated in our original challenge. The Vorthak hegemony will immediately withdraw from all occupied systems and release every enslaved species. Your empire will also pay reparations to help rebuild the civilizations you have destroyed. On the neutral world of Nexus Prime, Ambassador Choi Min-soo was standing before the assembled representatives of dozens of galactic species, and his smile was wider than it had ever been. The impossible victory was complete, and humanity had proven that determination and ingenuity could triumph over overwhelming force. Honored delegates, as you have witnessed, humanity has fulfilled our promise. The age of conquest through fear and brutality is over. We invite all species to join us in building a new galactic order based on cooperation and mutual respect instead of domination and slavery. The Haidari representative was so shocked that he could barely speak through his translation device, and his aquatic form was trembling in its tank. His species had been enslaved by the Vorthaks for 2 centuries, and the idea of freedom seemed impossible to believe. Ambassador Choi, is this really happening? Are the Vorthaks truly defeated? Will my people finally be free from imperial oppression? The synthetic collective representative was recalculating every assumption his species had made about galactic politics, and his optical sensors were flickering rapidly as he processed the implications of human victory. Logic demanded that he acknowledge the new reality, even though it contradicted everything he had believed. Calculation confirmed. Human military capability exceeded all projections. Vorthak defeat is mathematically verified. Galactic power structure has undergone fundamental transformation. New diplomatic protocols required. Captain Lim Yu-jin was broadcasting live to an audience that had grown to over 600 billion beings, and his cameras captured the moment when the Vorthak fleet began powering down their weapons in preparation for surrender. The most watched event in galactic history was ending with the most unlikely outcome imaginable. This is Captain Lim reporting the conclusion of the most incredible battle ever recorded. The Vorthak hegemony has surrendered to the Terran fleet after suffering complete tactical defeat. Humanity has achieved the impossible, and the galaxy will never be the same. Dr. Yoon Ha-na was monitoring the Vorthak recovery process, and her medical sensors showed that the electromagnetic attacks had caused no permanent damage to their nervous systems. The aliens would be unconscious for several more hours, but they would wake up healthy and able to return to their home systems. Admiral, all Vorthak personnel are showing normal biological signs. The neural disruption was temporary, and they will make complete recoveries. We have achieved victory without committing genocide. Commander Lee Dong-woo was recalling his fighter drones, and his pilots were cheering over the communication channels as they realized they had just participated in the most important military action in human history. The small Terran fleet had defeated an empire that had ruled the galaxy for millennia. Admiral, all fighter squadrons are returning to base. We lost 30% of our drones, but achieved complete mission success. The enemy fleet is no longer capable of offensive operations. Admiral Kang looked around his damaged bridge and saw pride and exhaustion in the faces of his crew, and he knew that they had accomplished something that would be remembered for thousands of years. Humanity had announced its presence to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. Captain Park, signal all ships to stand down from combat alert. The battle is over and we have won. Lieutenant Kim, transmit our victory message to Earth and all human colonies.